Juniors, welcome back. I hope you all are doing well. Really delighted by all the work that you've put in on these multi-genre projects, and we are getting near the end. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to really start that process of wrapping it up. And if you're someone in the audience who is like, what? We're getting near the end. I don't feel ready for it. It's okay, right? I mean, built into this calendar is the opportunity, right? If you are a little behind to catch up. So don't freak out, right? You can go back through these videos. You can go back through the updates in Schoology. Take your time, do it right. But this project is really for you to go at your own pace. So if you've been keeping completely up with this, you're wrapping it up. Maybe if you've missed a few, you need to do some catch up. Maybe if you haven't even started your topic, right? You know you've got a ways to go. But this video could be helpful for anybody because it gives you a sense of where you are when you're at the end of the road. So speaking of the road, let's check in on the calendar. So just to refresh, this was last week, right? End of April, beginning of May. And the last video mini lesson I had you do, you were looking at feedback from me, right, on genre 4. And I encouraged you, if you haven't yet gotten genre 4 in, obviously, the feedback piece is probably less helpful. But if you've done that, right, your assignment then for Tuesday, yesterday, was to complete the revised genre 4, right? So you've gotten the feedback. It should say feedback incorporated, right? Let me see if I can change that. Yeah. So you've gotten feedback from me, right? You've incorporated into your final research analysis. Now, that is not something I'm going to continue giving you feedback on. If you want to ask how this was, I can definitely correspond with you. But the idea is you've done the work now, and that can be incorporated fully into your big multi-genre project. So here's the idea now. You've now done 5 different genre pieces. You've got a really solid analysis piece. Now it's time to start thinking about putting it all together, like I said. So today's mini lesson is, well, you're going to just start to decide, looking back at all you've written, all the different pieces, the different genres, what do you want your letter to your readers to look like, right? How are you going to address an audience who's interested in your piece? And that audience is going to be your classmates because you're going to read each other's multi-genre pieces. What do you want to say as an invitation to your readers? Okay, so that's really going to be the goal that you have for this week, is to complete that letter to the readers. You're going to have a chance to check in with me on that. If you need feedback, support, I'm going to show you some examples right now in just a minute. And then if you look, all right, our goal going into next week is going to be to get a draft ready for peer review next week, and then we're going to put it all together to finish up by the 15th. And then after that, we're going to be sharing this out and doing some other cool stuff. But the main thing is, your goal over the next 2 weeks is to really do that work of synthesis, like we talked about and did with our poetry synthesis essays in December. Same idea here. So if you've got a copy of that, you can say, oh, that could be a helpful model. And I'm going to show you some of the teacher models that are also on Schoology right now. So speaking of models, let's talk about the letter to readers. Well, actually, let me show you the models first. So this is really cool. We actually have 4 English teachers, and you can see this in the models section on Schoology. We've got Ms. Sitzer, who's writing about COVID-19, Ms. Miller, who's writing about Vikings, Ms. Claudia Martinez, who's writing about it and friendship and courage, and then old Mr. Czaia, who's just writing about teaching. Why do teachers burn out? Why do they come back to the classroom? Something personal to me. So those are the 4 of us, and I'm skipping down to our letters. So in a minute, I'm going to show you just a couple different ways to approach it, because like any art form, right, there's lots of different ways to approach whatever your subject is, but it's nice to just see some examples, right? So I'm just right now going to the letter of each of them. And if you feel like it'd be helpful for you to to stop the video and pull those up, you can. They're just on Schoology. But let me pull up this document, which I'm sharing with you as well. So I'm saying here, we've talked about moves, right? That was one of the things you wrote in your notebook this year, right? What's a writer's move that's really strong that you want to imitate? What about if you're writing a letter to the reader, and this is, again, after you've completed all your genres, you look at them and you're going to decide, how do I want to sequence them? How do I want to put these together? And then after you've kind of figured out a little bit of a sequence, then you're going to introduce your material to your reader. And there's a variety of ways that you can do this. And these are just a few of the options, right? It's not, right at the bottom, it's not an exhaustive list, just a few options, right? One move that you could make, right, would be to introduce your topic, right? Talking about why this topic matters to you and why it should be important to others. So for me, that was about teacher burnout, which is something that I experienced as a teacher, and I also have noticed amongst other teachers, right? So if you look at mine, I'll flip to it. There we go. If you look at mine, you've got, here is kind of an example of that. With these two poles in mind, plumbing the depths of my own soul and casting a wide net to learn more about the topic in the world, let me give an introduction to what you had before in this essay. So this idea of sort of the personal, why this matters to you, and then the social, why this matters outside of your individual world. Both of those are things to keep in mind. All right. Then, in addition, right, we've got some other moves. So that was a me move, and by the way, these are not like just exclusive to that one particular multi-genre essay. I'm sure you see each of us doing it at different times, but I just happen to hone in those different moments. So Ms. Sitzer, I think, does a really good job showing this example. In your letter to the reader, you can explore the meaning or value of a keyword, phrase, or idea that you feel your audience should really know about. And so Ms. Sitzer is talking a lot about just how isolating the coronavirus has been. And that's actually made her think, ironically, about community, right? So she says, let me go to this, Mr. Czaia. Okay, I've spent the last month reflecting heavily on community. Community is a fundamental human need, right? Something, oh my goodness, something that's existed since the dawn of humans, and arguably even before. As a highly social person, community is something I crave and need to be healthy. All of a sudden, I found myself separate from every community of which I identified as a part. And she goes on. But the point you can see is she's doing a really good job of that move, right? Of really saying, right, what are those keywords, phrases, or ideas that for me are really important to exploring? So as you're watching this, you're thinking, what would that be for my essay? What's a really key term or idea that maybe I need to define up front or explore in more detail? The letter to the reader is a great opportunity to do that and really invite your reader in to whatever key theme you're talking about. Another really cool move that you can make is directly addressing your reader, reaching out with a second person, right? You, right? The you voice. Check out Ms. Miller's essay for a really good example of this, right? She's writing about the Minnesota Vikings, right? Her favorite football team. Look at this. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. I don't know why I can't zoom in. Anyways, she says, have you ever belonged to a group where you feel such a strong bond, a special bond, because of your connections and strong common interest in something? Have you ever experienced a sense of camaraderie based on that single common element? Is there something you are so passionate about that you could tell stories about it for hours on end? Right? We're right there. We're engaged by Ms. Miller's opening because she is directly addressing us, right? She's reaching out to us with the second person. And that is something that you absolutely can imitate, right? And by the way, you don't have to feel like, oh, I have to do all these at once. No, right? You can try. You might do 2 or 3 of them. You might find that some of them are more effective than others for you and your purposes, right? These are just some options, some tools in your tool belt as a writer. So we've got introduction of topic, exploring the meaning or value of keywords, direct address. what about opening or having in your letter some scene or captivating image, right? Using what we've learned about stories, right, to really open or close the letter in a really cool way. Let me show you an example from Ms. Martinez. She was writing about the novel It, and how it really makes her think about friendship and community as well. Look at this opening. Man. There we go. She says, let me see if I can go up so you can see that. She says, "Dear reader, imagine a folded up newspaper shaped like a delicate sailboat floating its way down a stream of rainwater." Ooh, nice image. A young boy in a yellow slicker runs along behind it, giggling with anticipation as well as fear of disappointing his older brother Bill if the boat gets lost. The scene piques the hearts and goosebumps of children raised in the 80s and 90s, but with 2017's remake by Andy Muschietti, a whole new generation can call the scene to mind. Cool, right? So we've talked about how a scene can really, really open or close in a strong way. We talked about that with our last genre 4 feedback, but it works the same way with this letter to the reader. So this could be a really cool way to open or close using what we've already learned about story. Finally, and I'm not going to go through all of these, right, because you've seen it. I would say no matter which of these kinds of styles and moves that you're making, somewhere in this letter to the reader, you're going to want to give a little catalog or list of the types of genres in your essay. So in my essay, you're going to see a poem and a newspaper article and whatever else it is. And here's why, right? You give a little rationale, and that way, right, your reader can really understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, right? Because they're going to commit to reading 15 pages of work, right? You want to really have them bought into your project, right? And they will be, right, if you set the table for them, using some mixed metaphors there. But you get the idea. So these, I say at the bottom, these are not an exhaustive list of all the moves you can make. I'm guessing you might have something new and creative to share with your classmates, right? I mean, I reached out, our English department reached out to each other and we shared these samples. That gives you some ideas, but you probably have some more new ideas yourself. So surprise us, right, with your new idea. All right. Oop. There we go. So again, the main goal here right now is if you have completed the genres, you did genre 5 last week, you've done your research analysis, you're ready for this step, right? You are now looking back over what you've written, all the different pieces. You're thinking maybe about an order, but you don't have to set the order yet. But you want to think about, okay, how can I introduce this overall project, all these different pieces? What do I want to say about them? So I would really recommend looking through the letters that I just shared with you in more detail. You can look them over all the way through. But then also you can look through the essays to kind of see how these different English teachers threaded the different pieces, how they did some of that synthesizing, because that's going to be your next step. Just as a refresher, I'm going to go back to the calendar. So homework for this week. Today is Wednesday, May 6th. You're going to work on that letter to the readers and get it done by Friday. And then later this week, we're going to talk about the repetend, which is basically the little thing that links up the different pieces. And that's really going to be, those are the pieces of the multi-genre synthesis essay. And once you've got those in place, you're getting ready for the final. So that's this week. Like I said at the beginning, if anybody's feeling like, oh man, I'm really falling behind, or I'm a ways behind, you can catch up. Okay, that you should not feel like the sense of freak out or I can't do this. This project is laid out so that even if you've fallen behind, weeks behind, even if you haven't engaged with it, you can jump back in and you can re-engage and it will be okay. So if that's you and you're watching this video and you're like, oh man, I'm freaking out, please reach out to me individually. We'll get you set up. It will not be a problem. All right. Thank you all. Hope you have a great rest of your day and looking forward to being in touch with you soon.